that kind of got in the way of that, so I'm not going to deposit my money because I don't want them to take what little bit I have. And that's how I even bought this game, was because, you know, I got Christmas money this time around. Times have been tough, man. Having a bachelor's degree means jack shit these days, unless it's in a specific field that actually is guaranteed to make money. And before, education was one of those fields, and then, you know, ever since fucking No Child Left Behind, this country's education system has been in the toilet. And as much as I appreciate the Affordable Care Act, nobody in this country is hiring full-time unless it's a really, really high-paying job. Because they don't want to pay for employees' health care. Like, that's the way that they get around the system. It's like, if they're full-time, you had to pay for their, you know, health insurance, so... Well, then let's just not hire anybody full-time then. Let's get this out of the way. And so it's like my degree was in, like, pretty much, it was a individualized studies degree, which means I put my degree together based off of classes I enjoyed taking in college. So, and for me, a lot of that was language classes and linguistics classes. Like, my university didn't have a full-blown linguistics major. It had a supplementary major, which meant you still had to get a quote-unquote real major to be able to graduate from my university. My university is mostly like an engineering and agriculture university. So anything that's, you know, the arts part of the arts and sciences is vastly underrepresented at my university. And they're still making horrible budget cuts today, so that goes to show you. Not a very, very high quality university in terms of what's available. But the people there were of high quality. Like, I met so many amazing people at my university experience. And I think that's really the major positive about going to college, is meeting all sorts of people from different backgrounds and cultures and histories. That is my biggest, you know, but the biggest way that I can say, hey, if you're thinking about going to college, that's one positive reason for going. The negatives that come with it, unless you come from a rich family, you know, is the student debt. You know, it's awful. And the government knows what they're doing with that shit. The current run government knows what they're doing with it. They want you to pay out the ass for the rest of your life for getting a higher education that is pushed by everybody. You should go to college. You should go to college. It's pushed by people to make you pay more fucking money at the end of the day. Like, everything in this goddamn country is based on greed. The health system is based on greed in this country. They tell you shouldn't eat certain foods and you should only eat other kinds of foods because those are the kinds of foods that make you sick. And then they can continue to charge you for medication because healthcare in our country isn't free. Like, it might be kind of tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy bullshit, but at the same time, like, you can see that being true. It's not just a complete nonsense. Like, our country doesn't pay for its citizens' healthcare, whereas every other country in the world, now I wouldn't say every other country, but a majority of countries pay for their citizens' healthcare. So of course they want their citizens to be healthy because they pay the bills, and if, you know, with healthy citizens, you don't have to pay the bills for them to go to the doctor.
Don't get in my way.
It's like, you know, I could rant about this all day, every day, but it's like, nothing in this country is done out of pure kindness. Only, like, at the state level will you start to see, like, things done out of, like, looking out for one another. Like, it's not because of the Affordable Care Act that I can, you know, go see a doctor. It's because the state I live in has good statewide healthcare programs. And so I can go to the dentist. I can, you know, right now I'm still, you know, reliant on having to use diabetes medication until I start to drop the weight. Like, I haven't had a drop of real sugar, carbs. I think I've been low carb. Like, it's like almost impossible to be carb free. But I've been low carb
Just go away.
for 6 days. and I still have, without my medication, like 160 plus blood sugar. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it's not where it needs to be without the medication. So it's like, you know, I'm getting there. I just have to undo these years of bad eating habits, bad quality food available to poor people in this country. And it's like, I don't want to hear at the same time, like, oh, well, it could be worse. It's like, I don't live in a third world country. I don't. And I'm not going to say I'm sorry if you do, because you're from that country. Like, that's your home. I'm not going to insult your home. I think it's
of yours. It's pretty, huh?
like, I don't like saying I'm sorry for people, because then that seems I'm pitying people. And like, in my heart, I don't believe people want to be pitied. They want to be understood. So it's like, it's hard for me to understand that, because I don't live in a third world country. I don't know what it's like to not have clean water to drink and a lot of luxuries that people in this country take for granted. But with all the luxuries granted to people in this country on top of base luxuries, poor people in this country don't have it any easier by our country's standards, because there are spheres that exist within the places that you live. Like, on a global sphere, a poor person in this country does better than a poor person in a third world country. True. But you can make that general argument about anybody. And it does nothing but make general arguments that doesn't solve the problem. It's just saying it's just saying something as a what if response, or a what about response.
That's nice.
And what about responses are the most cheap counter arguments that anybody could fucking throw out there. So, well, what about this? Well, what about it? It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Like, being poor in America has nothing to do with being poor in fucking some African village. It doesn't. There are false equivalencies. Because I don't live in that African village, I live here in America. So, like, people will come at you with these false, falsely equivalent arguments, and it's like, so what? That's really what your answer should be to that sort of thing. It's like, well, what about that? It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So it's like, in where I live, high fructose corn syrup items are fucking everywhere, and they're super cheap. And they're really bad for you. The amount of carbohydrates that is in all the food here is insane. Fast food is way cheaper than actual, high quality groceries. And even then, groceries, cows and pigs that are raised on growth hormones to speed up their growth so that they can be slaughtered and put on the shelves. That shit's not good for people either, because you don't want to eat growth hormone filled meats, because then that screws up human development. It's making kids, mature way more rapidly than what is normal. Like, there are little girls that are having, periods and stuff as early as 10 years old, which is not normal. But that's because somebody owns it. Like, somebody owns that, beef industry, dairy industry, poultry fucking industry. And all they care about is making more money, getting more product out to then sell to people. And that's the ugliness. That's the truth of it. And pretty much that's all you'll learn in colleges nowadays, because colleges are SJW factories. Like, shit, I was in a fucking graduate program. Oh, don't even get me started on this. I mean, I have enough time to rant about it, don't you worry. But, like, I was in a college program that only taught me how to be socially aware of people's struggles and backgrounds. And it's like, that's not practical for anything.
I feel like an easy win.
It's like, I was in TESOL teaching English just because of other languages. Because, like I said before, my undergraduate work was mostly in languages and linguistics. And so it's like, I wanted to be an English teacher. I wanted to actually work in Japan. I do still kind of, but I hear horror stories and it puts me off of going there. But I'll talk about that in a different conversation. But it's like, literally, it was the holistic approach to education. which is just a load of nonsense, and it was a waste of money. And it's like, I'm not gonna put myself even further in debt for this. I'm like over $30,000 in debt. You know, I'm not afraid to talk about my business. It's like a load of difference it does to talk about it. It's like, ooh, you know, wouldn't want people to know that I have debt, because everybody in this fucking country, unless you're born into a wealthy family, has some kind of debt or another. Because this country thrives off of. It thrives off of people owing money to the people who are pulling the strings.
An exquisite victory!
And I imagine it's like that everywhere else, but it's so, like, the symptoms of it are just, like, so bad here in the US. Because this country has gotten away from its roots of what it was. Like, 1908 was called the progressive era in our country's history, because that's when we had presidents who were willingly